I think the real butthurt comes from me always worrying about what she thinks about this, that, or the other thing. What is it we do in the red pill? We swap notes. Now, I'm sure people have heard all kinds of different stories about us, but I'm here to give you a glimpse inside the locker room. Here, we're going to discuss the field reports that happened a few years back. Brand new guys who are trying to learn the strategies that we talk about. Who am I? I used to be one of these brand new guys. I, like you, was pretty good at women and relationships, but I wasn't great at it. Hard times hit, things got tough, and it turns out there's nowhere for a man to go nowadays that actually wants him to succeed, to thrive, to get better at what he does and improve his lot in life. So, like most guys, I took it upon myself, found a bunch of guys in the same boat as me, and together we built a set of working strategies based on the experience of hundreds of thousands of men, just like us. Men swapping notes, iron sharpening iron. Welcome to the locker room. I just got an email from my wife informing me that she was so happy that she bought something she's been wanting for a long time, a hanging chair. She'd like to have it in our living room. Now, I don't remember her mentioning it before. And the problem is, I get so butthurt that she didn't even ask for my opinion, and my frame is so weak that I can't really figure out if I like the idea or not. Also, it partially comes from me saying no to several of our kids' requests for a cat, a trampoline, and Olympic rings inside the house because the wife didn't approve. One issue here is that my daughter has asked us several times to have Olympic rings put up in her living room during the winter, but we said no, saying it takes up too much space, and this is in the very same spot that the wife now wants a hanging chair. Somehow I feel like saying no just because, but I think the real butthurt comes from me always worrying about what she'll think of this or that. I also really don't want to say I'm butthurt about it because she didn't ask me first, and saying stuff like, okay, but for the next time ask me, it also feels like kind of a not so good comment. My problem with this particular piece of furniture is that it takes up a lot of space, and that she wants it where my easel usually sits. Now this could be solved, of course. At the same time, I think it would just be kind of nice to have, as we don't have any armchairs, just the sofa to sit in. Ugh. Also, I think that if I just let this pass, I accept that it's her deciding what comes in the house and whatnot, which is the case, to be honest. On the other hand, I don't care as much for home styling as she does. So now I have to decide for myself if I want this piece of furniture or not, but it's hard when I know one option will cause a major conflict that kind of also weighs in even if it shouldn't. A couple terms here before we get going. Walking on eggshells. This one is pretty straightforward. A lot of guys are very risk averse, and because every time they mention anything or tell no or set any type of boundaries whatsoever, the wife's initial response is anger. Anger is a wonderful response to a guy who's risk averse because they will always acquiesce, they'll always back off. So when you're walking on eggshells, it's this conditioned response where she knows that as long as she gets in a bit of a huff, the guy will automatically stop any conflict and stop telling her what to do. It's the ultimate female fantasy, a man who's afraid to tell her no. Just like she wished her dad would have always done. Butthurt. You can tell this one keeps coming up, boys. This is where a guy gets his feelings hurt because he treats the woman that he's talking to as his judge. He wants her to approve of his decisions. He wants her to pat him on the head, give him an attaboy for saying such a good, manly, masculine thing. The problem with this one is it puts the rightness or the wrongness of a decision strictly on the person's shoulders. Now, if it's a case like this too, where it's something that she wants but isn't best for the family, or which it is or isn't, doesn't really matter. The point is, he's treating whether she agrees with him as to whether he's right or not. And when you want to say something, when you want to be right, or you know you're right, and she disagrees, butthurt is the culmination of that female judgment mechanism. No. I think this word needs its own definition because guys seem to be very, very bad at it. In this case, I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest the reason that wifey didn't want the daughter having those Olympic rings in the house is because she wanted something there. It's very selfish. It's very solipsistic, I guess, and that's fine. A lot of the times the parents get to do things because the kids don't, because the parents pay rent. The kids don't. In this case, though, the problem was the guy, he got hoodwinked and he didn't realize it until way too late. So in this case, if there was an overarching plan for this house, for the family, for the life, these kind of decisions would make themselves, and he wouldn't need to worry about saying no and hurting her feelings. The advice for this guy, nut up and pick a direction. I hate to say it, but the whole problem with this guy is he's letting his wife run roughshod all over the house. He doesn't have, and because he thinks it's very unmasculine to decorate a place, he doesn't have a leg to stand on what's going in the house and why. You know what? Maybe it's not masculine to know if you want an armchair, an easel, or a set of Olympic rings, but had he had some direction for the family, these kind of choices, they would already be on the same page. Secondly, boundaries are super important here. If you'll notice, she purchased a piece of furniture without asking, without telling, without advising him. Basically dumping on his lap saying, I did this, you need to accept the consequences. And that's not on. But here's the thing. That's not the kind of thing that develops from just because of a chair. This is the kind of thing that developed 100 different times in this relationship over the years. Maybe it was something small. She bought an ice cream when she knew he was on a cut. She makes all these little boundary pushes, and he acquiesced on so many of them because he didn't think that he had the right to be the judgment for the house. And here's what happens now. If you keep saying no, or if you keep forgetting to say no, or not thinking you deserve to say no, you're eventually going to get into situations where you really should say no, but you're too scared to. You're essentially walking on eggshells. And while I can't speak for all women, I know I can speak for a lot, saying they're absolutely horrible with family finances. A friend of mine working as a banker, she was talking about how 90% of her clients were the girls walking in with a huge amount of debt and her soon-to-be husband walking in with a great surplus. So unless you got that 1 in a million type of wife that's awesome with her finances, you really need to start controlling this stuff, because somebody has to be fiscally responsible. And if you want in a relationship, it might as well be you. So what's in this for you? I get it. It's a chair. It makes no difference. It looks like money's not the issue. It looks like the only thing that's the issue here is he doesn't know if he wants it, and he's worried about losing some kind of power struggles. Forget about the power struggles. Forget about that. Have a direction. Sometimes you knowing what you want in life makes these decisions decide for themselves. And you know what? Over the years, had he had a vision for the family, if it was a minimalist lifestyle where we don't need Olympic rings in the house, then we don't need a chair in the house. And everybody understands that, and that's a boundary you can enforce. Or maybe we do want things in the house, but the adults decide. Or maybe we have a certain style we want. We'd love an armchair. But the point is, he's not worried about losing some power struggle because this was sorted out well before he was worried about having to say no. So if it does come up, and there's something that is done that's outside of the boundaries that the guy sets in his relationship, then he knows what to do already. We talked about this, take it back. And if she doesn't, he will. An alternative setup for this is pretty straightforward. When it comes to things, you set your boundaries early, you set them rigidly, and you set them consistently. You have things that you will not put up with in a relationship, period. Now here's the thing. You do this early and you learn to calibrate it. Because girls will test you. They just do. That's what they do. Dad says no, girl cries, guy backs off. It's just the way the world works. Through this process, though, she's going to find out, and you're going to find out, which one of your boundaries are actual boundaries, things that you're willing to leave over, and which of them aren't. Things that, situationally, if she makes the good enough case, that you have no problems with. And this is the purpose of setting these boundaries early in your relationship. So that way, she knows when she's crossed the line with you, you know when you've crossed the line with her, and everybody can just live happier knowing that they've worked from the same rule book here. Now, on a corollary to this, your boundaries don't have to be reasonable. She doesn't have to agree with them. All they have to do is be yours, and you have to be willing to enforce them. You can make the most ridiculous demands, and if you're attractive enough that she would be terrified of losing you, or just stupid to even think about losing you, then yeah, you can enforce the strangest and the craziest boundaries that you find are important. But on that note, you kind of get where I'm going with this one. So I'll tell you this, take care, enforce your boundaries, enforce them early, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.